Hello all and welcome in here to Tier 2, Round 2 in Spain. You're joined by me, your commentator WHF Arrow, and we're here for the second iteration of the championship here in Spain, the Catalunya circuit. And we'll see who we can go on board with. I believe the Red Bulls are leaving the garage early here, alongside the Alpine Williams of Cthulhu first out on track here. And we've got Spearing Julin here. Hopefully we can get Lucas Dirksen in. And let's go on board back with Cthulhu here. We've got one more driver to join before we fully have everyone in. We'll have 16 grid here if Lucas can get in. But as Cthulhu rounds the final corner, we will follow along the Williams driver. First driver to set a lap here in the Catalunya circuit. And Cthulhu meanwhile, we follow Dubsy along as well on a lap. Got a purple first sector as well, Cthulhu. Still on the charge here, we've got Josh, Dubsy, Zampa all on their laps. Naka Kraka just started a lap. The driver's starting to but as Cthulhu now rounds the final two corners here, and Callum has left to pick up a setup, but it has retired his car, which is quite funny because the game is just so good, and you know. But Zampa now goes next with a 12.4. Next cross line should be Dub with a 12.8, followed by Josh in the McLaren. As Josh now comes up to the line, what lap can he set? Josh in the McLaren now does an 11.7. Good lap time there. With an 11.7, as we see some car gets squirrely there, it seems, but Naka Kraka and Dobo both set their laps as well. Charisma now comes up to the line. Another 12.4, three drivers on a 12.4 as it stands. Next across the line should be Wed Throne in the Alfa Romeo, but he is invalid, so it will be Spared Fungus, who got P3 last time out, almost had the win, but on the final lap it was taken away from him. Meanwhile, there's multiple yellow flags out, but I don't know if that's for anything actually severe. Red Throne. And apologies, we're dealing with some chaos at the moment, trying to get Lucas Dirksen to join, and also Callum has retired his car, so I think we may have to restart the lobby after qualifying, potentially here. But anyway, we'll try and find someone on a lap here. Could be Spared Fungus going on a second Porsche, but I don't believe he is. We do have the Alpha, or the Aston Martin coming around, as well as the Simon coming around. Dynamic Duo on a lap. Spring Jewel just on an in lap. So it will be the Salmon next to start a lap here. Followed by Tactics, who won last time out in Bahrain. And let's see what they can do here around the Spanish circuit. Can they put it on pole again here and win? Josh very quick though with an 11.7, going to be tough to beat. But can Tactics do it? Kept a relatively good lap so far. Meanwhile, Josh has left the session. That's Tactics now. Had a Williams there dive out of the way just in time. And Tactics goes quickest with an 11.6 there. And we'll try and get Josh back in here. As well. Meanwhile, let's see who's next on a lap. It should be GB in the Ferrari. Very quick last time out. Was battling with Tactics for a large majority of the Bahrain Grand Prix. But then last time out, if you'll remember, both Tactics and GB got drive-throughs that sabotaged their race. GB ended up finishing P4. Meanwhile, goes up to P3 in qualifying at the moment. Next across the line should be Dynamic Duo starting a lap. Let's see who else is on a lap. Could be Charisma on an out lap. Zampa was a 10th up, but I believe he may have backed out of his lap a little bit. Had made an error there. Meanwhile, Cthulhu crosses the line, but a couple tenths down on his time. Meanwhile, we go on board with Charisma. Have the two SSR OGs back in the Red Bulls of Zampa and Charisma. Meanwhile, Dynamic Duo does jump up to P4. Charisma now, as he rounds the final corner. Can he improve on this 12.4 that has him P11 at this stage? Charisma unable to improve, 2 tenths down on their time. Meanwhile, it should be... trying to figure out who's next on a lap. Could be Dobo, although Dobo's down on his time. I think Wedge Throne also down on their time. There's the Haas of Nakakraka on an in lap as well, it seems. So I think who's just started a lap there? Was it Dubo again starting a lap? We'll follow Dubo along here. did an extra outlap for this second push. Did Dobo. And Dobo is pushing here, but does have that rear light flashing, so probably does not have the battery that he would like. 3/10 down on his time. I don't see much improvement happening here. Meanwhile, we have Spearing Jewel being followed along by Zampa here. On an outlap here. Spearing Jewel seems to have been doing an extra outlap as well. We're on board with Spared Fungus on a lap in the Mercedes. And last time out did get a podium, but may have been disappointed as the win may have been in the bag. Evening in the chat. Cod, welcome in. Cod was your Tier 2 Constructor Champion last season in the McLaren. Unfortunately, Scotland unable to make it here today, but we do have Callum and the reserve of Josh in the McLarens, who are representing the team well. Meanwhile, Spared Fungus clips the grass there on his lap. That's going to lose him a lot of time on this lap. And as he enters Sector 3, you can see he's a 10th down. His time will move down to Zampa, who's a bit closer to improving. And Cod's cheering on GB. GB currently P3. Zampa now just under a 10th up on his time, which could jump him up to P8, maybe even high as P7 if he can get the right run out of the final corner. Chucks it in. Oh, and just invalid. It would have been a good lap. It would have put him P4 that lap, and Zampa's spinned it. Okay, wasn't necessary. Anyway, there's still 5 minutes remaining, Cod, so I've no idea why he's done that. Just absolutely given up. Meanwhile, we do have Josh on a lap next, who could still get pole here. No idea, Ravage. There's 5 minutes left in the session. He's given up. I don't know what's going through Zampa's head there. As Dubsy's retired from the session in the pits, I believe. As Josh now going to round the final corner. Can he put it on pole here? Downshift into sixth. And crosses the line with an 11.4. And that is pole currently for Josh in the McLaren. And we have got Lucas Dirksen in, so hopefully he can get control of a car and get a lap set here. Meanwhile, Cthulhu all the way up to P3, mega lap from the Williams driver. As it could be Spearing Jewel now. Although Spearing Jewel may be starting a lap. It did say he was very down on his last time. Meanwhile, Charisma on a lap behind Dobo. And Josh and Cthulhu are on in laps. But it will be Dobo around next. Dobo, who got P2 last time out in Bahrain. He'll be looking for an improvement here. Had a little wobble, it seemed, mid-corner. Or we're just getting some desync, it seems. That's more what it comes down to. Meanwhile, Dobo rounds the final corner. Can they improve on their time? Dobo now up to P5. Good showing for the Alpine driver. Meanwhile, Charisma in the Red Bull The penultimate corner, then the final corner to go. Can Charisma improve? I don't believe he is going to improve here. I think he may be going on another lap here. And he has saved the battery, probably just trying to dump some of the fuel. Spain is one of the shorter circuits where normally in the game it gives you a bit more fuel than you want, so you can do an extra outlap to dump some extra fuel. An extra lap to warm the tyres as well. Meanwhile, we're going to start to see all the drivers pile out of the pits. And Charisma now. Coming round with the Ferrari next. Where are we at tomorrow? We're at Hungary at COD. And I need a whole lot more practice because, you know. But at the same time though, still ejected. Oh, and Charisma goes wide out of the final corner. Pushing too hard. Meanwhile, let's see who else is on a lap. Wed Throne going to come across the line now. Can they improve in position? All the way up to P5, Wed Throne goes. And next across the line will be Tactics starting a lap, but he does have an AlphaTauri for company of Dynamic Duo, but I believe Dynamic Duo is also starting their next lap. Meanwhile, the Simon / the Salmon as the Salmon goes a little wide but keeps it valid, so still may have the opportunity to improve, but I believe he's too far down on his time to improve. And meanwhile, it'll be GB Sanderson across the line next. Can he improve? GB up to P2, he goes. Meanwhile, it'll be Naka Kraka around, who goes a little wide off track. Still keeps the lap valid though. Naka Kraka in the Haas. Backside of it. Doesn't believe he's going to improve. Meanwhile, Spared Fungus now having a little bit of beef with Wed Throne apparently. Meanwhile, Tactics has also had a crash with the AlphaTauri of Dynamic Duo, and Tactics has blocked Dynamic Duo's lap, it seems. Dynamic Duo 4/10 up there. And a mega coming together there between Tactics and Dynamic Duo, and I'm sure that will see the steward's desk. Yeah, COD, this already seems to be spicy here in qualifying. There seemed to be some drama between Wed Throne and Spared Fungus, and then even more drama between Tactics and Dynamic Duo. Dynamic Duo coming together with Tactics, which I'm sure the stewards will have to review after the race. But Josh on pole in the McLaren, the reserve. But here is your order from P1 down to P15/16, because Josh will be joining. Meanwhile, we'll load in to the 50% race around Spain here. We're just double checking if Lucas has a car. I need to change this off slow mode again. And GB's left the session. And a couple people leaving the session. I believe someone's readied up early. And we have a restart. Yay. Anyway, time for me to set up the next lobby. iCOD, we need to have a bouncer in the lobby, hey? So anyone clicks the button on their steering wheel, COD just comes over, fucking gives them a bang on the helmet, like, just gives them a ding. That's what we need. Anyway, we now have our next session coming in. And I do not have the order saved. Let's see here. Span. Alright, we're all ready now. Got the grid. Ready to go. Alright, here we are. Apologies for the delay, but we will be back in. Now, hopefully no one readies up early, or I've threatened them with a spoon. And we will have 33 laps around the Spanish circuit, the Catalunya circuit. And we have 16 drivers in. And hopefully everyone remembers their setups. If you're listening, remember your setups. Don't blame me if you forget your setup. It's on you. But hopefully we should give the drivers 3 minutes to pick their strategies, pick their tyre choices, their fuel amounts, and make sure to remember your setups. And hopefully we can have a good clean race. And we've already had drama in qualifying, which I'm sure we'll see the steward's desk, and that unfortunately does not bode well for the race. But we can hope beyond all hopes. But let me get your predictions in the chat. Who do you think will win? Will it be Josh, who starts on pole? Will it be GB? Will it be Tactics? Or will it be someone outside the top three as it currently stands? Josh, a reserve with us this season, was the Ferrari driver next season. We'll see. Can we get Josh a seat soon? And we should have 1 minute before we ready up and get racing for 33 laps around the Spanish circuit. And hopefully we can keep the drama to a minimum, but it is Spain and there will be pain. Unfortunately, but this is a circuit I do not have fond memories with. I like watching it in real life, but driving it I'm awful. But anyway, we have 16 drivers in for 33 laps around this circuit. But it is now hit 9:35, so all the drivers should be readying up. Hopefully they've all remembered their setups. If you forgot your setups, it's on you. At this point, we have multiple times said, but you can hear the dinging in the background, which means all the drivers have readied up, and we will get ready for the 5 red lights. Josh will lead us away here in the McLaren as the 5 red lights are out. Is it a formation lap? I think it's a formation lap. I'm pretty sure I had the formation lap turned off, but it's on. Interesting. Turns out the formation lap is turned on. Well, this will give us an opportunity to look at the tyres, as Josh is massively desynced. Wow. That doesn't bode well for the race. We've got mediums for Josh, Dobo, Nakakraka, Dubsy, and Callum. Softs, surprisingly, for a large majority of the grid, with only 5 of the 16 drivers going for mediums. Now, to me, chat, this is a medium hard. Dear Lord, Josh is very badly desynced. But this is like only a medium hard. I would not touch the softs here. This is a hard medium, medium hard. Plain and simple. But a lot of drivers going for the softs here, so a lot of drivers going for the soft medium, which is going to be awful. I know drivers are going to try and do it. It's going to feel awful to drive. It is doable to stretch at the end, but it will not be the quickest way for sure. But Josh could do a medium hard here, and wow, he is so badly desynced. I don't feel like it's my end. It's just Josh. Yeah, you can see Josh. If we go board with GB here, you can see Josh is jumping about the place. Josh's connection, unfortunately, struggling here. But hopefully we have no glitches under the start, as Spirit Fungus has missed his grid box. But we do have all the 16 drivers lined up here, and hopefully now we will get the 5 red lights, as they're now on and they're out. But no one's moving away because another game glitch. And they're out finally. On their way. On their way clean. GB's got a lovely start into turn 1 here. GB's got a good start. Tactics has been bottled up behind. Tactics has lost out big here. Meanwhile, the Red Bulls and the Mercedes coming side by side nearly. So far, everyone gotten away clean. You can see no contact, it seems, at the moment. And Zampa in ahead of Charisma. You got Dobo and Spirit Fungus here battling just like they were in Bahrain. And Spirit Fungus gets ahead here. Meanwhile, Tactics has had a woeful start from all the way from P3 down to P6. Needs to regain some composure here. But Tactics, one of the quickest drivers here. Meanwhile, Zampa going to send it in on the inside. He's overshot the corner. He's overshot the corner and he's caused contact with Dobo. Massively outbroke himself, and I believe he's caused Dobo some damage there. And unfortunate for Dobo. Meanwhile, Tactics is coming into the pits as well. Tactics may have damage here. Meanwhile, GB 1.2 ahead. What a monster start for the Ferrari driver. Tactics is retired from the session. Called it a day. Meanwhile, the Simon and Zampa battling here in turn 1. Into turn 2 they go. Zampa still following along, has Charisma and Dobo right behind him in the Red Bulls. But if you look at the lead chat, 1.6, 1.7 GB is in the lead. Just built this monster gap already over Josh, who was on pole. Meanwhile, Charisma going off, it may open the door to Dobo. Meanwhile, Dynamic Duo on the inside of the Williams of Cthulhu. Meanwhile, Josh ghosted, oh my word. And unfortunately, Cthulhu gone off there, hit a bit of the brake marker. We've got Nakakraka around at the back, had a spin unfortunately. But the gaps are building now. GB in the lead. Meanwhile, Spurring Jewel also had a spin unfortunately. But GB in the lead outside the DRS as the DRS has been enabled. Cthulhu now on the inside of Dynamic Duo. Good move from the Williams driver. Spirit Fungus watching this battle along as well. has the Simon waiting in the wings as well. But GB has escaped the DRS. Meanwhile, Josh has escaped the DRS of Wedthrone as well. Wedthrone trying to escape the DRS of Cthulhu. Cthulhu has Dynamic Duo all over the rear of his Williams. Meanwhile, we have P3 from last race. Spared Fungus in P6 following this battle along. Cthulhu has been catching Wedthrone though. The AlphaTauri of Dynamic Duo goes off. Will Spared Fungus look for a move here? Not able to find a way through. Meanwhile, Charisma gets ahead of Zampa. But when Zampa goes off, Zampa has a big clunk of the inside curve there. And Charisma now surely dumping the battery to try and catch the lead pack ahead, who he's just out of the DRS from. Meanwhile, Dobo following along Zampa as Dynamic Duo and Spared Fungus as we get another horrific angle. Cthulhu still defending, and Dynamic Duo just has so much pace here because even with the driver ahead of Cthulhu having the DRS, Dynamic Duo is able to find a way through. Bit of contact, Cthulhu. Contact with Spared Fungus here as well. They go side by side. Spared Fungus is going to get through as Cthulhu over the curb now. Side by side he goes with Charisma. Cthulhu losing out massively here. Charisma's going to get through. As Zampa going to send it on the inside. 3 wide. Reckless from Zampa as he's gone for the double send. Contact between the McLaren of Callum and Charisma as well. Charisma's gone round under contact with his teammate Zampa. Unbelievable stuff here as the Salmon finally going to have the DRS to get through. Meanwhile, Dynamic Duo on the outside of Wedthrone make it through here into P3. Absolute carnage here on lap 5. There's been a lot of carnage. Meanwhile, Wedthrone and Dynamic Duo continue to battle. Wedthrone on the inside here, around the outside. The AlphaTauri's trying to search for the traction, and he has got a great race so far for the AlphaTauri's. Dynamic Duo now in P3, he has Wedthrone for company. Meanwhile, Josh, you have to remember, Josh is on the better tyres than GB. Meanwhile, Dobo sends it in. I believe Dobo does have damage, unless Dobo doesn't have damage, actually. Cthulhu on the rear of Dobo. And I don't believe Dobo has damage here. I believe he has escaped without it. Meanwhile, there's Simon now on the inside of Wedthrone. Wedthrone may send it here on the inside of his teammate of Dynamic Duo. Lovely defending from the AlphaTauri's here. Great teamwork, it seems. The Salmon and Dynamic Duo seem to be a wonderful pair. Meanwhile, Zampa's had an error and he's allowed Dub Z, Cthulhu and Dobo through. There's a yellow flag out. I don't believe for anyone there. It's for Josh. Josh now 4 seconds back from GB. Josh has had a big error. Meanwhile, the Simon all over the back of Wedthrone. But Josh had a big error, which has allowed GB more space to potentially do a soft hard here. If he does a soft medium, those tyres will definitely be squealing. But the Salmon looking for a way through in Wedthrone. Wedthrone almost outside the DRS of the driver ahead of Dynamic Duo. Dynamic Duo all over the rear of Josh and gets through into P2. What a move from Dynamic Duo. Round the final corner. It seems Josh may have damage here, as now Wedthrone going to get through. Maybe even the Salmon as well, if he can get a good run down the straight. But side by side they go. This Josh is lagged out. I'm going to try and get Josh back in here immediately. Oh my god. Controller? Why is my controller not? It's not letting me invite him to a game. Oh. Anyway, we've now back to the racing we go. Dubsy on the rear as Josh, now still losing places, finally got his chance to rejoin. But is it going to let him have control of his car? Losing a lot of places here, unfortunately, for Josh. Had a good start, but desync, unfortunately. Meanwhile, this has been perfect for GB, now almost 6 seconds in the lead. Meanwhile, the Salmon on the back of Wedthrone, going to get through into P3 here. What a race this is for the AlphaTauris. P2 and 3 they go. Meanwhile, Zampa gets through on Dubsy in the Mercedes, but the AlphaTauris having an absolute monster race here up into the podium positions for both drivers here. Could be their first podium. In WHF, and it would be lovely to see two teammates on the podium, sharing the podium if they can get it. Meanwhile, Spirit Fungus all over the rear of Wedthrone, if he can find a way through. Lovely battling throughout here. Meanwhile, Spirit Fungus and Josh is lagged out again. I'll see if I can get Josh back in again. Hopefully my controller works this time. There we go. Right, Spirit Fungus picked up a time penalty here. Let's have a quick look at the time penalties here. 3 seconds for Zampa, who is on the inside of Cthulhu now, into turn 1. Bit of wheel banging of Zampa and Cthulhu. Zampa's going to get through here. Cthulhu has to use too much of the curb than he would have liked there. Spirit Fungus also has a time penalty here. Callum and Lucas Dirksen unfortunately going to get ahead of Josh here, who's unfortunately had trouble with meanwhile, Cthulhu now on the back of Zampa. Zampa outside the DRS of the car ahead, but Cthulhu struggling for downforce through that corner. Couldn't get the right run out. We'll have to wait to the next straight. Meanwhile, Nakakraka also got through, and Josh, as Lucas Dirksen goes off, trying to push to stay with Callum in P10. Meanwhile, Spirit Fungus in the Mercedes got a much better run down the straight and may get the move here on Wedthrone. And Spirit Fungus now into P4. Could be a good result here for Spirit Fungus on the horizon. As Ollie in the chat says, GB Tier 1. Meanwhile, Cthulhu on the inside of Zampa. Looking for the move. Contact between the Red Bull and the Williams. Zampa's gone off, and Zampa's massively clunked the wall. Big contact between Zampa and Cthulhu there. And Zampa's absolutely smashed the wall. I have no idea how that Red Bull is still going. That is one of the biggest smashes into the wall I've ever seen, and it looks like there's no damage on the car at all. Oh my lord. Meanwhile, Wedthrone still following along Spirit Fungus. The Salmon closing up to his teammate, Dynamic Duo. Meanwhile, Lucas Dirksen's retired. It could be a safety car. It's a VSC out. It's a VSC. Lucas Dirksen's lost it there. And that is our second retirement of the day. It's a VSC. Josh still not in here. I'll see if I can get Josh back in. All the pit stops coming out now have added. Zampa's got a speeding in the pit lane penalty. But this VSC could massively help the drivers behind. Dynamic Duo, Wade Throne, the Salmon, all on mediums. All the hard runners here, I believe, could be in very good standing. The hard runners can go to the end here. GB in the chat says worst timing ever. If it's good timing if you still keep driving your car. Also, GB, I would use the softs for as long as they go switch to the hards. You will have better tires than everyone else, so you'll still have good pace. I would not worry, because GB still leads by 22 seconds. So even if Dynamic Duo does get ahead, GB may still have the fresher tires. But Dynamic Duo, I don't think he can get mediums through to the end. 22 laps, is it? 21 laps on mediums around Spain. That's cruel. That is cruel. Meanwhile, Zampa and Callum get ahead of the McLaren of Josh, who's unfortunately unable to rejoin. Meanwhile, the Salmon on the rear of Wade Throne. Wade Throne happened to get through. Meanwhile, it could be 3 wide here into turn 1, as they may both get through on Spared Fungus. They do. Contact between Wade Throne and the Salmon, and the Salmon's gone round, and unfortunately had a coming together with the AlphaTauri. Meanwhile, Spared Fungus on the rear now of Wade Throne. Caught in the chat says should have boxed to cover the undercut. I would argue that GB still has the pace to use on fresher tires. But there is he has lost 2 seconds this lap, so may need to box this lap. But GB's gone out again, so continues to lose time. Does want to try and stretch these softs for as long as they'll go. Meanwhile, Naka Crockett gets out of Josh as well. Josh, unfortunately, unable to rejoin, having troubles with his connection. Meanwhile, Zampa and Callum side by side, they go. Horrific camera angle. Callum gets through on the Red Bull of Zampa. Zampa still following along Callum. Meanwhile, GB picks up a time penalty, entering the pit lane. I wonder, is that a genuine warning or is that some game glitch? It may be removed at the end, but GB going for the mediums, going for the risky strategy. Dubsy will lead us away here. Meanwhile, will Dynamic Duo have undercut GB? I believe so. But GB still may have the pace to use if he comes out here ahead of Wade Throne, which he will. Meanwhile, Spared Fungus now on the rear of Wade Throne as well, and GB now has 3 seconds to get caught up to Dynamic Duo, but with 3 lap fresher mediums, I believe GB can do it, especially at the end of the race, whenever the mediums will definitely start to struggle. I mean, I wouldn't do a soft medium here at all. I would have been doing a hard medium. So the fact that all the drivers have gone for soft medium, I would surely say Dynamic Duo's mediums will be completely dead at the end. But a lot of the drivers now on the hards. Wedge thrown now still within the DRS of GB. GB yet to get those new mediums warmed up to escape. As Wedge thrown now, almost losing the rear through the penultimate corner here. Meanwhile, Dynamic Duo now within DRS range of Dubsy. But GB now catching ever so slowly. 3/10 he's gained to Dynamic Duo. Dynamic Duo may lose some time here behind Dubsy. Dubsy may inadvertently be playing a team game here by holding up. Dynamic Duo, actually he lets him through. He does the opposite. He does the opposite. Dubsy's like, we're not on the same strategy, I'm just going to let you go. Meanwhile, GB now 1.8 behind, has dropped Wedge thrown out of the DRS. That's precisely, unless he does have it active, he doesn't have it active, but this is precisely what GB needs, is to not have anyone hanging off his rear and just use the pace on those fresher mediums to catch Dynamic Duo. And GB may even have DRS of Dubsy ahead as well to help him on his journey to try and catch Dynamic Duo here. And GB sets the fastest lap of the race as he goes on the inside of Dubsy and is going to get the move comfortably into turn 1. He's now 1.4 behind Dynamic Duo. And as predicted now, these fresher mediums are showing their pace. I'm caught, I believe they removed the bump in the pit lane. I think. I'm not quite sure. I'm not going to be 100% on them. It's EA, you never know. They say they removed something. Turns out that thing is actually way more overpowered than it used to be. So they could have removed that glitch, they could have not. Spurring Jewel retires in the pits. He's called it a day. It's a safety car. It's a safety car. I think Spurring Jewel's lost it in the pit lane. Has he? Safety car. And I think Spurring Jewel lost it in the pit lane. I can't quite tell. But Josh now, again, if you want to rejoin, there's a safety car. And he's on fresh mediums, he's on the good tyre. I'll invite him again. It's potentially could have lost the rear out of the final corner there. Meanwhile, GB out on fresh mediums, Dynamic Duo out on fresh hards. But I believe GB now on the better tyres, Wedge thrown. But this has massively benefited Dubsy, as Charisma's also got a 3-second time penalty entering the pit lane. But we missed what happened there with Spurring Jewel. It's potential Spurring Jewel could have lost the rear out of the final corner, spun on the inside wall. Or he could have lost it going into the pit lane, because he lost it pretty far down the straight. So not quite sure. COD says to GB, be patient. I'd say, GB, rush. Rush. Give you the opposite advice. You pick which one is worthy. Panic, GB, panic. No, I'm only joking. But we do have Cthulhu now leading us away. 6 laps older mediums, which may struggle here. I'm not entirely surprised everyone's gone the mediums. Oh no, Dubsy's coming in. I don't know why Dubsy's coming in. He was in very good track position there. I believe he had a good position nailed on there. I know he was on the hards, but I do believe the hards still would have been somewhat effective. He's gone softs. Okay. Interesting. Anyway, Spared Fungus now and Dobo swapping for positions, because why not? But kind of baffled why Dubsy's going to the softs. It's going to be a bit of a stretch to make them to the end. They're going to be really dead at the end. But you never know, Dubsy could win this and I could look the idiot, so I'm rooting for Dubsy now. Dubsy, I want him to win. Meanwhile though, Cthulhu, Dynamic Duo, lead us away here. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Cod. Spain is a high deg track. I know, I raced here in Tier 2 TIR and I had kept a gap to Hayes behind, and then I had overheated my tyres and then Hayes just came straight through. I had, as in, for around 10 laps, I had kept her 2 seconds behind, and then the pace just absolutely went because I did not know how to manage tyres. Because I've been chucking off the assist, so it's hard to adapt. Anyway, moving back on into the race, Cthulhu's going to get us restarted here. Does have 7-lap-old hards, so it may be tough to defend here. Meanwhile, Dynamic Duo on the rear here, as well as GB trying to find a way through. GB bottled up here behind of Cthulhu. And GB even maybe having the top of the rear. On the inside now of Dynamic Duo, GB goes. Cthulhu may open the door to GB. GB may have a look on the inside. Cthulhu going to keep defending. GB has to back out. Dynamic Duo going to get back through again here. And GB looking around the outside. Can he get the traction? Battling here for P1 goes GB, Cthulhu and Dynamic Duo. GB and Dynamic Duo still side by side here. GB's finally got through. Wed Throne now joining this battle as well on the mediums. Dobo, Callum all here as well. Wed Throne may even send it on the inside of the AlphaTauri. Wed Throne does have a look. GB round the outside of Cthulhu. Goes wide. Meanwhile, Cthulhu looking for the way back through. Meanwhile, Dynamic Duo on the inside of Cthulhu has to back out a little bit. It's very single lane through the penultimate corner there. Meanwhile, Dynamic Duo make it back past Cthulhu. Wed Throne now looking for the inside. Wed Throne on the inside of both, make it into P2 here with the... That's a big contact with Dynamic Duo. Dynamic Duo's gone round. Big contact there. Spared Fungus now on the inside of Callum. Gets through on the McLaren. Meanwhile, and Zampa's retired in the pit lane. Zampa's called it a day. Meanwhile, Dynamic Duo, big contact there. And there's more contact as that Spared Fungus gone off. As we're having a lot of desync here, so hard to tell what's happening. A lot of cars jumping around the track. The Salmon on the back of Dobo. Meanwhile, Cthulhu's lost out as well here. Cthulhu down to P8. Meanwhile, Dubsy in P5. Is Dubsy a genius? I think he is. Dubsy making him go for the podium here. He's balled up by the Salmon and Dobo. the Salmon going to set it on for P3. They're battling for the podium here. GB now 3 seconds in the lead. Callum in P2 did a last to first, potentially last to second at the moment. Dubsy now on the inside has to back out from the Salmon. The Salmon may set it on Dobo. Dubsy's had a monster restart here. Unbelievable. He's up to P5 already. Meanwhile, Dynamic Duo having contact with Cthulhu, it seems. Spared Fungus now behind Charisma. Charisma on the back of Dubsy, who will get the run here. Cthulhu picks up a time penalty as Charisma goes deep. Oh, and there's contact with the Red Bull and the Mercedes of Spared Fungus. And Charisma and Spared Fungus have been spun round, and it's gone from bad to worse. Multiple contacts today with Charisma. I feel for Charisma. A lot of contact. Meanwhile, the Salmon going to get through into P3 here. Dubsy's absolutely dumped the battery here, trying to charge for that P3. Meanwhile, the Salmon in P3 goes. Meanwhile, Dobo, the Salmon, still fighting on for the podium along with Dubsy. Dynamic Duo in behind. Wade thrown here for P6, but there's been a lot of contact this race. GB continues to lead 3 seconds ahead of Callum. We will see if that time penalty gets removed at the end. We're not quite sure. It could or it could not. We will have to see. Meanwhile, Dubsy, as we head on now to lap 23, can Dubsy get the run down the straight on Dobo? And it's going to pull out of the toe to try and cool the engine. Meanwhile, Dynamic Duo on the inside of Wed Throne gets through. Lovely move from Dynamic Duo, trying to recover what was lost. Big contact following the restart. Dynamic Duo sees himself now down in P6. Meanwhile, his teammate in the AlphaTauri, the Salmon. Meanwhile, Spared Fungus and Naka Kraka, and Naka Kraka's going round. More contact we see here, it seems, and this has been a bit hard to watch at this stage. So much contact between the drivers. This is why we know like Spain, as me and COD may have came together here, and it was less of a coming together and more of a torpedo on the inside from myself on COD. Apologies yet again, COD, in the chat. But anyway, as we move on, Dobo now on the inside of the Salmon. Gets back through into P3, continuing to battle here for the podium. Meanwhile, Dynamic Duo defending from Wed Throne. Meanwhile, still the battle for the podium rages on. Dubsy falling a bit back from this battle, 8/10 back. Now, I did mention how the Softs would start to struggle, and I think you're already seeing that. Zampa has left the session. Zampa not happy with how his days went. Meanwhile, the Salmon now looking on the back of Dobo, but you can already see Dubsy's Softs falling off. Only 6 laps on the Softs. He's done, and he still has 9 laps to go on the Softs. Gonna be tough going. May lose out to Dynamic Duo, who's out of the DRS from Wed Throne here. Meanwhile, we go down the straight. The Salmon looking to catch Dobo here. Could the win be between GB and Callum? Is GB going to get that time penalty removed at the end? Meanwhile, the Salmon on the inside of Dobo. We've not got an amazing camera angle here, but the Salmon does get through. I don't know why this camera angle is in the game at all. Meanwhile, Cthulhu has pit now for fresh softs, which will go to the end. Hopefully Cthulhu can get himself the fastest lap as well. Cthulhu knows he has that big gap ahead of Spared Fungus to get out, and he's going to go actually for the mediums, but they still will be quick regardless. Meanwhile, Dobo and the Salmon, this is the big battle here for the podium, as Callum now right on the cusp of that penalty. And I'm sure when we do interviews, GB will let us know if that penalty will be removed or not. I'm sure he will know himself whether he needs to push or whether he knows that penalty should be removed. We don't know if it's unfair or not at this stage, but we'll have to see. Meanwhile, we follow the Alpine driver, finished P2. Last time out in Bahrain, can see the rear light flashing on the AlphaTauri ahead. And Dobo now down the straight with DRS, may go for the move here, backs out of it. Probably smartly a bit too late to go for that move. But Dobo all over the rear of the Simon. Meanwhile, Callum here could have the win. Potentially, he has a net P1 via the penalty. On track we have here at the moment is for P3, the podium. It could be the Salmon's first podium with WHF. It could be Dobo's second consecutive podium this season. Finished P2 last time out. May get P3 here. Meanwhile, Dubsy trying to climb back into the DRS. There's even Dynamic Duo on the hards as we've 6 laps remaining in this race. Zamp in the chat says GB has 2 warnings to be removed, but you never know, he could have 2 more warnings. He could be on 5 warnings at the moment, so we just don't quite know. We'll have to check at the end of the race to fully know. Meanwhile, Cthulhu sets the fastest lap of the race. He will enjoy those extra 2 points. Meanwhile, Dobo falling a bit back from the Salmon here. 7/10 the gap. Can Dubsy use any more pace that he has left? But I just don't believe there's much left in those softs. But he isn't that far back from the DRS. Dobo starting to struggle here. Outside the Salmon. Can the Salmon close up? But look how close the gap is between Callum and GB. They're so equal on pace. Spared Fungus sets the fastest lap there. But so equal on pace are GB and Callum that GB may win regardless of the pan. But we'll have to again investigate whether the pan was valid or not after the race. Meanwhile, Dobo following along the Salmon has 5 laps remaining in this race. Dobo still hanging on to the rear of that AlphaTauri. The AlphaTauri still, the red light flashing to show you that they're low on battery, which I'm sure the Alpine of Dobo can see. Meanwhile, there's a yellow flag out, I believe, for Naka Kraka. Has got going again in P10. Still good points on for P10. And P11 for Spared Fungus as well. Still good points for us to be gained here. Meanwhile, Dobo still following along. Dubsy now fully 2 seconds back from Dobo. Dynamic Duo starting to catch Dubsy, 4 laps remaining in this race. Meanwhile, Dobo, can he go for the move on the Salmon? Still too far back. Might be waiting for the final lap to dump everything and go for it. But will GB win it? Will it be Callum? And who will be on the podium? Will it be the Salmon or Dobo? And the Salmon may have lost it there with that track limits penalty. Could have cost him the podium, with Dobo now just needing to stay within the DRS realistically of the Salmon. Doesn't need to push too hard to get past, just needs to stay with the AlphaTauri, and the Alpine should have the podium nailed on here. But as we head now, we're on lap 30 now. Spared Fungus on the rear of Naka Kraka here as well. Spared Fungus almost bumping the rear of Naka Kraka. Spared Fungus make it through contact with Naka Kraka here, and Naka Kraka goes off. Very strange incident there. Meanwhile, Dynamic Duo now inside the DRS of Dubsy. Dubsy 12 laps on those softs. I did mention how they would struggle, but Dubsy still may have P6 on the cards here. Meanwhile, Dynamic Duo on the rear of Dubsy, gonna blow by the Mercedes. And Dynamic Duo at one point could have had to win this race, it did seem. But I'm sure P5 back at the AlphaTauri. I just don't know if those softs have any life left in them. Meanwhile, still follow Dubsy along. Dubsy still within the DRS of Dynamic Duo. And as we head onto the penultimate lap now, GB 2.6 ahead of Callum. Will this win be GB's or Callum's? We just quite don't know yet. Meanwhile, Dubsy picks up a time penalty. That is really all she wrote, and that will be P6 at best for Dubsy, I believe. Meanwhile, Dobo does have the DRS here, I believe, but needs to use the whatever pace he has left just to stay with the Salmon. Meanwhile now, Callum 2.4 behind GB. But will the win be JB's or Callum's? We just won't know. As we still have battles going on here. Dobo now, as we head on to the final lap, may have one more shot here at getting the move on the Salmon, but I'm not even sure he wants the move because he knows he just needs to stay within the 3-second margin of the AlphaTauri driver. Meanwhile, Callum's firmly inside the 3 seconds he needs to be in, but it really is a debate, really, Is GB's warnings genuine or not? We just quite don't know at this stage. It could be Callum's win, it could be GB's win. But as we know, on the final lap, can Dobo get the move on track? Goes for the outside of the Salmon. And the Salmon goes defensive, but it may be a lovely switch back here from Dobo. Contact between the AlphaTauri and Alpine, but meanwhile, GB rounds the final corner here and will win in Spain. Callum will jump him on penalties, but will that penalty be removed? We'll have to find out. Meanwhile, the Salmon here may lose out to his teammate Dynamic Duo as well. We will see Dobo jump up to P3, Dynamic Duo P4, the Salmon P5. Let me see if I can get the race director really quick. Just to see if those warnings are genuine. Let's see when they mention GB. GB gets 2 warnings there. 1 warning there. So GB has 3 warnings. And Zampa says he needs to remove 2. So if those 2 are removed, then it will be GB's win. It'll be Spared Fungus around next to finish. But there is your finishing orders. It should be either Callum or GB winning. We're not quite sure yet. We will have to see. But I will get them invited to the party now, if I can. Callum is your driver today, and deservingly so. A last to first / P2, we just quite don't know yet.
Good evening.
Welcome in, Callum, as you come in. Tick the box.
Going from P15. Hard. Very, very hard. Especially up until that safety car, I didn't think I was really going to do anything. But the safety car definitely saved me.
Yeah, I'm honestly not quite sure if you have the win here or not, because GB still could have that penalty removed. We're not quite sure, but we'll see GB as he joins the party here, and Dobo. Dobo and GB, as you come in, make sure to tick the box as well, so that the stream can hear you. Oh, wait, let me.
I can hear myself on there anyway.
You sure?
No. Yeah.
You coming through?
Yeah, there isn't a box.
Alright. Stream can hear everyone, yes.
Yes, I think so.
Alright, that's strange. Anyway, moving on. We'll first start with Dobo. How'd your race go? Another podium this season. How'd that race go for you?
Oh, hang on, no. Yeah, this stage. I thought I messed up at first because I started on mediums. But then the virtual safety car kind of saved me because I just went with hard. And then that safety car again just went to a brand new set of mediums. And wait, I know we can't hear us on the stream. We can't hear us on the stream, just check your settings.
Yeah.
There's no box for us, just in case it's on party off. Wait, so what do I do?
Right, there should be a box in the party now.
There. No, right.
Yeah, but
I thought there wasn't a box, and then you confused me by saying it was working, GB.
I thought I heard my own voice on it, and then realised it was just your voice instead. Sorry about that.
But anyway, Dobo, go ahead again there.
Yeah, I thought I messed up at the start by starting on mediums, but the virtual safety car helped me, so I just went into the hards. And then the safety car actually helped me because then I was able to just go on mediums again. And then literally, I saw everyone was crashing around each other, so I just thought, well, if I just keep it clean, then I should hopefully finish up there.
Yeah, and it was a very good another podium for yourself. Then we'll move on to Callum, who is confusingly either P1 or P2. I'm not quite sure, but Callum, how'd that race go for you?
No qualifying session was very hard, but to be able to come through the way I did, I'm really pleased with myself. I didn't think I was going to be in for a podium after the first half, but we got there in the end, and I might have a 5 sec coming my way. So I had to try and pull that gap as well, which I did. I'm really happy with that.
Yep, very good race, Callum. Last to P2 at least, which is very good result. Meanwhile, we'll move on to GB, who either has P2 or P1. How'd that race go for you? And what is the situation with your time penalty as well?
Okay, so I'll start with penalties. So on turn 1, on the left-hand side, there's a weird bump that sometimes throws your car offline, and it got me once and gave me a warning for it. But also in the pit lane, I got 2 warnings at the same time. I think I did cut the inside a little bit too much. I need to go back and check, but either way, it gave me 2 warnings for it. So I think between the game deciding to throw my car in the air and the pit lane giving me 2 at once, I think at least one of those is coming off. So I'm taking it as a P1 with a sort of asterisk next to it for the time being. But it was a weird race because like the virtual safety car I thought had screwed me over because I just come past the pit entrance as it got called out, so I couldn't pit when it originally came out. But I stuck to I was always going to do a one-stop soft to medium, and then the safety car came out. I just went, well, I guess I just pit for fresher mediums then. And yeah, from then on, I sort of knew that the 3 seconds is more than likely to come off, but I wanted to ideally finish 3 seconds ahead of Callum just so there was no doubt about it. But unfortunately, the mediums just died off towards the end. But like I said, I think it's gonna get removed, or if not, as Callum said, he might have 5 seconds coming his way. So I think it'll be a win. It's just waiting for the formalities, basically.
Yep, well, very good race from everyone. A lot of carnage throughout qualifying and the race. I'm sure the stewards are going to be very busy.
Once again.
And we will be back tomorrow for Hungary Tier 1. Also, we'll be back next week for China, our first visit to China in quite some time, for Tier 2 next time out. And I'm sure everyone's buzzing, including GB himself there, you could hear, so excited.
Oh, I really am not good at China.
But also coming soon, we will have highlights posted on the YouTube of the second season of WHF. They're coming soon. It's GB, I'm sure will add soon. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, and in those results, I'm sure the results will be out by then, by the time the highlights are posted.
Oh god.
So if you stay tuned in the Discord, the results will just certainly be posted with the right result, but we don't fully know at this stage because there's still, I'm sure, a long stewards report to get through. But anyway,
yeah,
I've rambled on for long enough now. We're going to raid Matt and Tommy here on our way out.
Hey.
But thank you all for watching. Have a good night. We'll be back tomorrow for Tier 1 in Hungary. Stay tuned, where you get to see me race finally. And hopefully there's not another storm that causes me a power cut. But anyway, thank you all for watching, and goodbye.
Right, time to download 1,000,001 streams. Ay.